Greetings, this is Jazz for JazReviews with my full review for Watch Dogs. Developed and published by Ubisoft, available on last-gen consoles, PC, PS4 and the Xbox One.
I was the best at what I did. A hacker. A thief. I got in. Got out.
After a job gone wrong, an unknown identity seeks to meddle with the life of our main super hacker, Aiden Pierce. But after one too many jobs, Aiden finds himself nieceless. Yes, in the first 10 to 15 minutes of the game, as typical of games like these, a family member is lost. But this leads our main protagonist into darker entanglements with the more watchful villains of Chicago. This sets up the main narrative of Watch Dogs and the many missions to come.
They took someone very precious to me. Now, I'm coming for them.
The story attempts to make you feel for Pierce and the characters around him. Aiden is so modernized, yet only in the light of pleasing rather safe themes. His character is boring. He voices the most bland and simplified lines of dialogue, pulling almost no humor from the most light-hearted of moments.
We're clearing.
Even Max Payne had the balls to sling out some jokes when the bulk of his immediate family were brutally murdered. But it seems the core characters here convey all the same cliches found years before us in the same typical revenge plots. The main protagonist never really forms a meaningful opinion that may ever touch upon controversial themes. Ubisoft like to play it safe with their games, and it's a shame considering there are real-life attributes in play here. The right to privacy and invasive technology, something that is so relevant in the world today. Watch Dogs itself is ambient, full of life, with a huge number of pedestrians that inhabit Chicago, a number far exceeding the NPC count of Grand Theft Auto 5, and they all interact with each other. The map itself is big enough, and crammed with infrastructure and buildings with every turn. Yet, at the same time, Chicago is without any real form of personality, that in turn detracts from the originality of Ubisoft's new IP. The same old road sequences are one too many. The alleys and urban-styled areas are mixed into the same formula we know no different. Watch Dogs is a vast new network to explore, but at the same time very undistinctive, negating against the very design developers have worked so hard for. From the variety of guns provided to the player, whether it be obtained from gunfights, the gun store, or awards in the mission progression system, the weaponry is varied enough for an all-out dedicated military warfare, meaning you will see 50 caliber sniper rifles, grenade launchers, and fully automatic revolvers. Gunplay itself surrounds a typical cover-based shooting style not too distant to the mechanics of Grand Theft Auto. One button or key is assigned to a focus mode that in turn can be used for precision shooting and driving, which will slow down time for when you most need it. The lack of automatic cover recognition demands a more manual gameplay style that works just fine in stealth. But in times of all-out action, it can become frustrating in those crucial moments of life and death, due to the clunkiness of the cover system. You'll find you have to directly look at the cover as well as pressing whatever button to hide behind it. And any crouching you do has to be initiated through the cover system. There are no specific keys to crouch, jump, or even perform the most basic of melee attacks on innocent people. It is a rather simple game outside the hacking, feeling a little too scripted at times. The gun wheel selection works okay on the consoles, whilst PC players will quickly become agitated because it often takes 3 key actions to draw that one particular gun you may want to use. Firearms function quite nicely, with real recoil demanding the player to actually aim. But aside from the full-on combat, it is the stealth and more intelligently designed methods I'd like to talk about for a game that is so dependent on the success of this playstyle. Watch Dogs features a brilliantly designed difficulty system. On the harder of difficulties, intelligent AI will box you in both foot and vehicle conflicts. Should an enemy be able to fire off but a few rounds at Pierce, Aiden will die a rather sudden death. So this forces the player to pursue more tactical ways of approaching a mission. So the main rundown is this. Through hacking surveillance camera to surveillance camera, your entire route can be planned all through an enemy territory, making cameras a great way to scope out an area. And at the same time, Aiden can also hack various environmental things like gas tanks, gates, mobile phones, or even detonate an enemy's grenade, all through the same camera feed. And when things go tits up, you can always gun down your enemies without mercy. Strangely enough though, the gang hideout side missions, for example, do require the player to spare the main target, depending on the gig. There's never any penalties for slaughtering the rest though, and this is a slight problem. The intelligent way of playing Watch Dogs seems like the most satisfying of playstyles, but it's not necessarily the easiest. Stealth is not rewarded, and with a complete mobile arsenal at your disposal, it just makes more sense to mow everyone down in a fraction of the time. Luckily though, the difficulty options and fast-moving flanking on the AI's part do put a strain on this. A good few story missions, however, do enforce an all-out stealth approach, laying down some rather unforgiving insta-fails should Aiden become detected. The stealth isn't half bad either. Amazing for a free roam game. Enemies will communicate with each other and lock down to your location pretty quickly. Upon infiltrating or waging war upon an enemy base, whichever the style, you are then usually pointed to hack into the main CT or S system. These pipe dream puzzles are quick and spaced out just enough to avoid feeling like an annoyance. The main story missions do start to diversify further into the game, some being a lot more original than others. Aside from the campaign, there is enough side content to qualify Watch Dogs as a true open world game. There are convoy missions, setting up some hectic chases or gunfights in an attempt to stop the enemy reaching the destination. There are fixer contracts involving a little tailing until the hack is complete. There are gang hideouts to clear out, as well as little mini-games like drinking games, chess-styled activities, and the cup game. Most of the side missions are triggered by the impressive profiling system. One flick of a button allows Aiden to see the most embarrassing or criminally liable info on a pedestrian, and all randomly generated. Reading someone's texts or listening to calls could lead you to a potentially dangerous situation where you'll wait for the crime to happen. It comes across a little pretentious and, frankly, insane on Aiden's part, as well as slightly repetitive in gameplay terms, but vary out these side missions and encounters enough, and it's a ton of fun. Now, killing pedestrians or robbing shops, for example, will lower the player's reputation. The only apparent negative to this would be that civilians are more likely to call the cops in whatever situation. But robbing people's bank accounts is completely fine. There is a lack of consistency with pretty much everything in Watch Dogs. You can drive like an absolute maniac and no sod cares. Pull a gun in public though, and you'll want to get to that person calling the cops as soon as possible. The cops are easy enough to avoid, but once they catch on to you, they can be a bit of a nightmare. The police will run CTOS scans left, right and center, and the only practical way of dealing with this is to make use of the jammer that will cut out all communication. Alternatively, the blackout consumable is another awesome way to knock off an entire area's electricity. The skill progression system is very nice, featuring typical shooting and driving upgrades. The hack unlocks are something else. As standard, you can hack traffic lights, but by gaining points by completing missions and killing people, you'll get to use things like bridges, bollards, the steam vents and the manhole covers, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Customization wise, you can buy new outfits that are basically all of the same design. You can unlock some very high-tech weapons after completing every mission in a set. For example, beat all the convoy missions and it will unlock the Destroyer sniper rifle. There are many collectibles to be found too, such as audio logs, missing people's bodies to be located, and music to be unlocked, of which the only songs I ever really played were by Alice Cooper, Weezer, Rise Against the Machines and Public Enemy. Other than that, the radio stayed off for me. The driving itself takes some getting used to. It's very arcadey styled, light and bouncy as hell with all or nothing turning, which kinda works as the crashes are quite forgiving. It's disappointing though that you can't shoot from vehicles, not even from the nimble motorcycles. Of course, there are also boats and trains that can even be hacked for the ultimate getaway. You can even wield a firearm and blast away to your heart's content inside. But odd things like this do detract away from the open world fun of it all. Watch Dogs isn't as smart as it thinks it is, and there is a little identity crisis in play here. At times, I don't think it really knows what it wants to be. The game's elements don't really link up that well. I don't like to mindlessly compare games on a whim, but in no way is this title as advanced as, say, a GTA 5 in all-out development. Graphically, the game can be beautiful on all platforms. Reflections and water effects enter into next gen, but it doesn't look as great as the footage we saw in E3. In the daylight, Watch Dogs does look really good, but nowhere near as vibrant in the nights. But seeing Chicago in the rain can look pretty damn impressive. The game is poorly optimized for PC and will only run at 900p on the PS4, 792p the Xbox One, and both at only 30 frames. The reflections are pre-rendered and will only appear on static objects such as buildings. Not to mention some really bad pop-in with traffic, and because of poor draw distance and pop-in, you rarely have enough time to hack the traffic lights to impact upon enemy pursuers. And lastly, the 4 digitally augmented games deserve mention. The stealth game alone was a little boring, but there are 3 more activities including the alien gunfight and mechanical spider mayhem. A lot of completely isolated fun. There's also 1 or 2 other distractions such as cash runs, all linked to the online leaderboard rankings. And occasionally you may run into a random event such as petty theft. So on to multiplayer. Throughout your playthrough, you will be nagged with opportunities to, say, hop into a friend's game. You can even create missions for them and manipulate many of the city's functions, which is also possible through using a tablet. The decryption mode though definitely sets up some of the coolest moments to be had in Watch Dogs. 2 teams of 4 seek to nab as much data as they can, and then escape through absolute chaos with all of these hacking elements in play. Online Invasion, on the other hand, pits just 2 people out against each other in an Assassin's Creed-styled incognito sequence of hacking and profiling. Once the characters detect each other, a massive chase across the entire city ensues until the target is brought down or escapes. Races and complete free roam are also available, making the multiplayer a very memorable and dynamic experience in whole. So combining all that Watch Dogs has to offer, you could be looking at 30-40 hours of gameplay. But ultimately, the game really doesn't hold together all that well from a development point of view, with many inconsistencies and issues, all with narrative problems. The game is certainly a AAA title, and will provide less critical gamers with a more enjoyable experience than others. I issue Watch Dogs 7.8 out of 10. This has been Jazz for JazReviews, and this has been my long-ass review of Ubisoft's Watch Dogs. A game of sleek, on-the-fly hacking, creating tons of those high-octane action moments, both in the many side missions, campaign, and decent multiplayer. But for me, everything is connected in Watch Dogs, just not necessarily that well. For more reviews of titles like these, please do subscribe to my channel. Stay up to date with the channel by following my Twitter, which can be found in the description below. But until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the comments. I look forward to it.